Welcome to this edition of the IMCS MasterClass. In this edition, we have a passionate social scientist invested in social change dynamics which value human dignity and social inclusion and justice. He has a PhD in political sociology at the University of Lomé and worked and consulted with all four NGOs in Togo as a specialist on human rights, conflicts, transformation, or youth development issues. He has deepened his interest in human rights and social justice issues while working with IMCS Romana for 4 years as international president, coordinating the movement around the world in 75 countries. He had the opportunity to design and implement several capacity building programs in several countries in the world. He is purposeful and eager to create avenues for the transfer of knowledge, opportunities, and information to key targets. He has a penchant for excellence and wish always to see the fruits of his work in the lives of people, victims of marginalization, conflicts, and discrimination. Now grab your notepads and pens because this edition of IMCS Masterclass has former IMCS International President Dr. Edouard Kareweh.
I am very happy. It's a pleasure for me to be here with you to exchange on a topic that I think is fundamental for me and for a lot of people nowadays. We are talking about social responsibility, human dignity, and human right for transformative leadership in Africa. So it is a pleasure to exchange with you around this, what I can call common interests on that will help us to address common challenges because whether you are in Ghana or in Kenya or in Burkina Faso, Togo, South Africa, Malawi, we are facing almost the same challenges. So the reflection I am having today on the topic, as I highlighted, aim at proposing lenses through which we can seek coherence and effectiveness throughout our personal development and social transformation efforts. This is the one side, and the second level is to see how we can find in the notion of social responsibility, of human dignity and human rights, important tools to lead change in Africa, and especially as Romana members. So when we start reflecting on the global idea of leadership, there are four basics for leadership potential. Four. The one is the will. The will push you to action. You know, the will push you to action. This is the first element. The second element is value and principle. No one can lead without having some value and some principle. And this value will guide your action in human and ecological manner and in a positive or negative manner. But there is a value and principle by which any person work. The third element is skills and competencies. And the skills and competence will support your action to ensure their effectiveness and their efficiency. And the fourth element, which is not really popular, is to have a mission beyond oneself. Nowadays, with the liberal capitalism, we see more and more the dynamics of success on the bracket, all oriented toward one person. The one person having billions, one person having this and that. But in what I see transformative leadership that we need in Africa, there is a need, a prerequisite to have a mission which is social, which is not for only ourselves, but to respond to a social need. Because that's where you're trying to find in the current social and political patterns where your contribution will play and induce change. So that's where IMCM even come, right? because IMCS aim at creating citizens with high clarity of thought and conscious enough to understand what is lacking. That's what we use pastoral cycle for. Train youth leader motivated and engaged enough to transform positively the reality and prepare these leaders to make a difference in their professional field or in their whole life, wherever they are. So the effort I am trying to do in reflecting on the transformative leadership and the effort IMCS Pax Romana is trying to do respond to some lacking element in our educational system generally in Africa, where we are generally, the system transmits some competence and skills. But when it comes to principles and values, we are evaluated to know them, not to practice them. I remember when I was in primary school, we used to do have some lessons called moral and civic education, where they'll tell you the emblems of the country, when you want to cross the road, what is the first things to do. Nobody create a situation in which they see if you apply the principle and the values you have learned. You are taught to know them, not to practice them. These are some lack of our educational system. And and then when it comes also to the motivation to be engaged for social transformation, most of the time it doesn't come from our educational system, which are less and less considering patriotism, social consciousness, and so on and forth. It comes most of the time through other social circle where youth are engaged, like Pax Romana, where the situation is created for you to test your leadership capabilities and practice some of them. So that's why my reflection, in my reflection today, I am more interested in this missing, I can say missing because they are not popular, dot, which are social responsibility, human dignity, and human rights. So we could wonder how they come together and how these elements could improve the leadership skill that our continent require. We'll come to it later. But without saying it loud, when we come back to the youth constituency, as we talk about Pax Romana, the mission entrusted to youth is to create new type of society by challenging and transforming current political, social, economic, and cultural order. So the representation of youth in decision-making body as lauded most of the time. We need to make sure that youth are represented in political, economical sphere. It's not about having the seat for youth at the table to perpetuate the existing order. It is about getting deeply ready to undertake unpopular but right decision by challenging systemic injustices. That's where the notion above mentioned could lead us on the greatest questions. So when you assess African problems roots, it's not about lack of intelligence, it's not about lack of competence within the continent. It is mostly about lack of integrity, the ground on which prospers the lack of integrity is made of lack of social consciousness, which we call also common good. It's about greediness, about lack of sense of human dignity, etc., etc. So as of today, youth represent more than 40% of African population. And when we talk of youth, we refer to a demographic power which cannot be neglected. Are we together? So the transformation we seek in our continent, especially from youth, is not first about technological or scientific or whatever. It is a bit about mindset revolution. It is about narrative. It's about social consciousness. It is about social responsibility. I don't say all these things are not important, but to make it more clear, the question will not be how many digital revolution and have we realized, or how many machine or project or trending brand, etc. we have created. The greatest question is, all this for what or for which end goal? What is the end goal of all this? For which society? Is it authentic? Does it respond to the problem we face and the type of community we envision? And that's, for me, the most important, or the first most important thing, because all the above things I've been mentioning are important. But for those things to be optimized, we need first to set global mindset and goals. So having the right question is an issue half solved. We need the right questions. Let me give you an example. On this question of youth representation on the context where we are, I will propose you two questions. The question one, how could we increase youth representation in decision-making bodies in Kobosa? Kobosa is a fictive country I have created. Question one, how could we increase youth representation in decision-making bodies in Kobosa? And second question, how youth participation in decision-making body could trigger positive change in Kobosa? Question one will lead you to bring youth to decision-making position with no possibility to measure nor monitor change, because the end goal was to bring them in decision-making position. But while question two will seek the unique added value of youth in decision-making position, and the answer will lead the way to design clear advocacy document and measure on how good these youth are playing the role expected from them. That's where you see the importance of question. According to the question you ask, it will lead you to different action. This is a bracket I have opened and bracket is closed. So when we come back to the idea of leadership development process, it is important to start with fundamentals. And for me, the fundamentals are those. When we start with fundamental, we could formulate coherent and comprehensive questions which take into account all the dimensions of human life, human well-being, and offers opportunity to optimize individual endeavors. Now let's come to this, take this notion one by one. We will not have the time because it's a 10-minute session to develop all of them, but we'll go quickly around them. So when we take the notion of social responsibility, most of the time we hear the notion of social responsibility when it comes to enterprises, when we talk about how the role of enterprises to repair or mitigate negative impact of their activities on surrounding communities in area in which they run or they work. So generally, you will see enterprises involved in activities such as social infrastructure, building school, hospital, and undertake environment protection or social cohesion activities, etc., or peace building, etc. So these efforts of enterprises are seen as corrective or mitigating measure to a real or potential threat to collective well-being or ecological sustainability. Out of this, we hardly refer to this notion, even though it's point out an essential element of our existence. How do we make our human family a socially, ecologically, culturally, and politically resilient, authentic, and striving one? This is one important question when we talk about leadership development with youth across the continent. So the leadership young people are invited to develop should have a component which link their area of interest to the global challenges of their countries and their continent through an intelligent questioning which subscribe to a broader view. You can't just say, I want to make money, I want to create my enterprise to make money without seeking broader view how this contribute to my community well-being. The leadership young people are invited to develop in Africa should have a component which link their area of interest to the global challenges of their country and their continent through an intelligent questioning which subscribe to broader views. And I was giving this example of young people which is interested in creating its own business without paying attention to how this business could deteriorate his environment, could contribute to its community well-being, could take on some challenges that are faced at national level and at continent level. And more, as we see the Pan-Africanism, African Renaissance, and all this notion coming on, it is the duty of young people to take on their own contribution through their personal development and their business on all the area, either in the digital domain, political, business, education. All these areas could take on their own respective and individual responsibility in improving the living condition of the community at a different scale. So the new leader in Africa should take their part of responsibility from broader challenge of the continent. So when we are asked, let's take this question, sometime we are asked this philosophical question, why are we on this earth? What is your answer when you are asked this question? So some people is about enjoyment. Being on earth is about enjoyment. Other will say is to have a family and work hard to sustain its need. For other people, it will be like, yeah, to be committed to protect the environment and so on forth. But when you think of it and the education we have received through Pax Romana and all those things, you understand that it's about taking full ownership of the asset we are given as a human being and use them to transform our environment to make it better than we found it. But this includes also having family, living and enjoying, being joyful, and so on and forth. That doesn't exclude all these elements that we spoke about. But yeah, this is about using the full potential we are given to transform positively where we are. So this here come also with a notion of social responsibility. So how do we fulfill this without a strong sense of social responsibility, which could be also known as a sense of common good? For those who know, the CSE is the Catholic social teaching is one of the strong notion, one of the strong principle, and the principle of Ubuntu also. You were because I am. We can't fulfill this fundamental mission we have on this earth without having this sense. So every leader or aspiring leader in Africa need to have a strong sense of social responsibility as the only way to be useful for its community and the continent in sustained manner. So by doing so, we humanize social transaction in the sense that everyone matters and everyone has to be empowered to improve commonwealth and individual well-being. So that's where the notion of human dignity comes. We define the human dignity as the worth to be respected and recognized. In many of our cultural, traditional language in Africa, we have this notion. In Neve, we talk about Jena. Jena is known also as human right, but I think Jena is mostly human dignity. Jena, what you are worth to, or what you are worth for. So human dignity is the indicator. Human dignity is the highest measurement tool. Whatever we do is supposed to be related or to improve human dignity. Wherever you work, wherever you do, whatever you do is linked to human dignity. Any individual work to improve its living condition is about improving its human dignity. It's a means for a dignifying life. Political leaders are entrusted the role to find better ways to increasingly elevate their people to a dignifying life and organize their people in such a way that everyone has a place in the society. Parents struggle or strive to offer a life of dignity to their children. Nurses and doctors have the same mission to improve the living condition of their patient. A patient that suffers or a human being that suffers every day doesn't have a dignified life. Those who are involved in ecological protection, this is about dignifying life, because if the environment is polluted, it is not giving a dignifying life. Those that invested in education, I have given a training recently where I say, whatever you do on this life, find how it to contribute to dignify the life of your target group, or else there is a missing point or a missing dot from what you are doing. So it's to repeat what I've said. That's why the human dignity dimension is it's very, very crucial for aspiring leaders in Africa. In whatever you do, if you don't see the value of human being or the human dignity dimension, you miss all of it. You miss all of it. And anything that doesn't dignify the human person isn't ready to develop what we call it today emotional intelligence, which is key in leadership development principle. So to come back to it, aspiring African youth leaders should start today to see in whatever they do in daily basis, if it upheld human dignity principle, if it give value to human being. And then the last point, when it's come to human right, for me, the best tool ever, the most important tool ever, the international community has ever created is the human right principle and human right mechanisms. Why? Because human rights are known as legal tools of protection mechanism and so on and forth. But what's not said loudly is that human rights are meant to progressively create a society free from kind of oppressive practice, and society in which every human being is worth of respect and freedom. So human rights are the tool that are created to protect human dignity. And that's why, for me, it's the best tool ever the international community has created, and the youth leaders should take on to make sure that their leadership development is aligned with the tools that are created here, which are human rights, to protect human dignity. So human rights are, first of all, about humanizing society by creating a social representation of a human being which pushes for better respect of human dignity. That's why beyond all the definitions that are given to human rights, I like so much one definition that is given by Jack Donnelly, which is a scientist for America, I think, and who consider human rights a minimum set of good, service, opportunity, and protection that are widely recognized today as essential prerequisites for a life of dignity. So the leadership we need in Africa, to finish, can't avoid understanding and upholding human rights principles. And to conclude, as I have short time, to conclude, this is not leadership training. I call it reflection on leadership development as a potential tool for sustainable development in Africa. Like grounding the whole thing we know about leadership, helping others, being having this competence, having this skill, but grounding all this something stronger, something that make leaders actor for sustainable change in Africa through a strong sense of social responsibility, a strong attention to a human being dimension in whatever they do, and lastly, a value to human right principle and mechanism as a way to protect human principle. So this is my conclusion, and this was the short reflection I had to share with you